Hello and welcome. My name is Angela Thompson and I appreciate you joining me. Today I'd like to share a project with you on behalf of tinypandora.com. Let's begin. Let's talk for a second about the type of surface you can do these on. These plaques I picked up at Walmart. They were around $1 each. They would work perfectly. Also, there is this little frame that I picked up at Michael's, and there's a variety of these cutout or shapes, but it doesn't come with a glass or any kind of surface to use on it, but that's okay because you can get these type of canvas panels at the Dollar Tree for $1 a pack, and that 4x6" one fits perfectly. These panels would be fine to use for this project, even though they're not very stiff. We're not working with a heavy saturation of paint, and they would hold up. This canvas came in a 2-pack from Walmart, 3x9". Price point was under $4, and this is the one that we're going to use today. You're going to want to have a bowl of water on hand or a jar, and then a couple of sponges, or you could use a paintbrush. I like a sponge with a sharp edge. I've just cut this one with a box cutter. The other sponge here is a regular sponge. I've just kind of folded it and cut chunks out of it, and the back is plain, and then a sea sponge. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sponge and dip it in the water and then wring it out. I want it damp, but I don't want it dripping any water whatsoever. Then I'm going to take that sponge and wipe across the entire surface, including the sides and the edges. I'm doing this to put a little bit of moisture on the canvas to help break surface tension, and because I like that it causes the paint to thin just a little bit, and so it looks like more light is getting through in different areas. I always wet my sponges first before I work with them and wring them out thoroughly, and then I'm just going to dip into my lightest color and working from the top. I'm going to dab it on the canvas all the way around, down to about 2/3 of the canvas toward the bottom, and I do want to make sure I'm doing the edges. Because I don't frame these type pieces, I just mount them onto the wall. If you're going to frame yours, you might not need to do the edges. That's entirely up to you. So I'm going to work the blue down, keeping in mind the basic design that I want to use for the piece. I know that I want my seagrass and other items to go up the left side and then across the bottom. So I'm not going to paint those areas yet. We're going to get into those a little bit. But first I'm going to get a good coating on this, and then I'm going to let it dry. Next, you're going to get your 2 tiles. You can use ceramic tiles or you can use recycled glass panes. These are the panes that were inside a couple of different picture frames. Not very thick. The glass is about 1/8 of an inch thick, but it will work perfectly for this technique. Put some acrylic paint on one piece of the glass, and then using a spreader, spread it around. You just want to work it out toward the edges and get as even a coat as you can on it. The thicker your layer of paint, the thicker your coral fractures will be. So I always aim for a lighter coat of paint because I want those lines to be fine. So once you have your paint spread out, you're going to take the other pane and you're going to press it right on top of it. I want to just show you what this process does. If you're using ceramic tiles, you won't see it. So I'm going to use this glass and show you so you can see exactly what's happening. So press the pieces of glass firmly together. You'll see the paint underneath start to spread. You want to get a really good connection between the two pieces of glass. And then I'm just going to slide it up a little bit so I can get a grip on it. And then I'm just going to use 2 fingers from the back and push it slow and steady and watch what happens. I saw this technique on YouTube a while back, and ever since then I've loved to use it to make coral. So there, that is actually going to be our sea coral. So now the fun part is getting it onto our canvas. Obviously the canvas is a hard surface and that's not going to work real good for paint transfer. So that's where your sheet of scrap clay comes in. You're going to lay it across one of these pieces of glass, and what it's doing is it's just going to transfer that paint for you. So lay it straight down, don't move it, just lay it down and then pat it gently so you can pick up a lot of the paint, and then lift it straight back up. And the paint transfers to the clay, and then you use the clay to transfer it to your canvas. The secret to getting this to work is not to allow it to move up and down. You only want to pat down solidly onto the surface. You don't want to let the clay slide either up or down or side to side, or it's going to mess up your imprints. So I'm going to do that a couple times and pick up the images that we're going to transfer. And once we do the rest of the prep on the canvas, everything will blend in and it will look nicely. This is going to be background coral. And I'm going to keep doing that one more time here. And then the sad part is I don't have anything else that I'm working on, so I'm just going to rinse the rest of this beautiful thing down the sink. But that's what happens. The next step, now that everything is dried, will be just to finish painting the canvas. I'm going to let you watch how I do this. I'm going to speed it up a little bit so it doesn't take a whole lot of time, but you'll notice that I'm layering in the mid-tones and the darker tones. I'm coating all my edges, and I'm just building a nice background to work upon. This is what my finished background piece looked like. I'm going to set that aside right now, and then I'm going to start gathering up my tools. You're going to want your favorite sculpting tools, a blade, an acrylic roller, texturing tools, so sandpaper or a toothbrush, something simple. And if you have one available, the 1-inch template from a tiny Pandora cuff or easy bangle kit. With your well-conditioned clay, you're going to make a couple of Skinner blends. The first blend will be a traditional Skinner blend with 2 colors. The next blend will be slightly altered. We're going to pull out some of the center as indicated by this oval that I've sketched into it. and we're going to replace that with white. Then go ahead and make a Skinner blend with that. Once you have your Skinner blend completely blended and made, use your 1-inch template and cut off 2 inches from the bottom. So you're going to use your 1-inch template twice. Then we'll make jelly rolls out of those strips, rolling one light to dark and one dark to light. Now take your Skinner blend and turn it into a long strip using a medium setting on your pasta machine. Then cover that strip with a thin layer of black and run it back through the pasta machine on a medium setting. Then you'll take your long strip and cut it into 3-inch segments, and then stack those segments on top of each other with the black on the top. When you're finished, you should have canes similar to those pictured here. You'll have a set that has the white added and then a set without the white, and these are the canes that we'll use to make the components of the panel. Using one of your altered plug canes, cut off a piece that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. Then you're going to elongate that section by rolling it, stretching it out with your hands, rolling it some more, just work it out until it's a long, thin piece. You're going to use this to make the seagrass, which will come up on the left-hand side of the panel. So pay attention to how long you're getting it. I didn't like the way that end cap looked, so I went ahead and cut it off, and I'm just pinching the cane ends back together to make a point to the top of the seagrass. I'm going to make 2 longer pieces, one a little bit longer than the other, and then a shorter piece. Now that I have my individual pieces of seagrass, I'm going to put them onto a tile and arrange them how I would like them. I'm going to take some of my darker color clay and make a small base for the bottom of the canvas. I'm just going to make it into a rough triangle shape, and then once I have those basic shapes, I'm going to check the sizing against my canvas to make sure that the seagrass is as tall as I need it, that the base is as wide as I need it, and then just kind of use a flat blade and straighten everything up so it'll look nice on the canvas. Then I do want to leave it attached to the tile after I've checked everything, and I will leave it on the tile throughout the entire process of sculpting the rest of it, baking it, and then even adding the UV resin to it. Attaching it firmly to the tile, it almost has a little bit of tension where it kind of adheres, and that will help keep the piece flat and straight through the UV process, so it's easier to attach to my canvas. I'm going to use my darker color and make a coral piece to go in front of my seagrass. I'm going to meld some pieces together and give it a pebbly type texture. And then once I have it pretty much how I want it, I'm going to use my blade to release it from the tile, and then I'm going to put it into place on the seagrass and then do any final detailing that I want to do to the piece. take that other small piece of seagrass that we had saved from the beginning and work it around this coral. And then I'm going to make some more sea-type structures and finish building this out. Now I'm going to make a spiral type structure to go in the forefront of the piece, and I'm going to need this clay very malleable. It needs to be very soft so it's easy to work with. So I've warmed it up really well with the roller and with my fingers, and then I'm going to start to roll it on itself just a little bit. And then once you get that center core, just push it from the side with your finger on the right hand side, and that will encourage the bottom to meld together while the top splays apart. And that's basically what I'm doing all the way down the spiral form, is putting the pressure on the bottom and allowing the top half of the slice of clay to fall open. And then once I have them secured, I will go back with a tool and open them up a little bit more and then put some texturing on it. I'm going to cut off a small piece of the plug cane and reduce it till I get it pretty small and pretty thin. Now we're going to make some fun little pod shapes to fill in some of this area, as well as another type of coral shelf that goes, I'm going to put it up under the spiral piece and fill the rest of this in. The last thing that I want to put here is a little sea creature, and I'm going to do that by mixing a very small amount of my lightest color with some translucent, and then I'm going to roll it out into a very thin log, and I'm going to make a sharpened point on one end, cut it off in about an inch length, and then I'm going to repeat that until I've got 6 or 7 of the thin little lines of clay, and then I'm going to gather them up and put them together, but letting them splay out as well. And then once I've got the bottom secured, I'm going to cut it off, attach it to the side of the panel, and then I'm going to roll out one more little thin pointy piece, use a drop of liquid clay to secure it in the middle. Now I'm going to make any final adjustments that I need to, as well as add a little bit of highlighting mica powders, and a couple of places I'm going to use some pan pastels, and then I'm going to set it aside and make the jellyfish. So now we've made the major components for the wall hanging piece, and the only thing left to make is the jellyfish. So I'm going to gather up all those little bits of pieces and end pieces of the canes, rough sides I cut off, everything that I have put together in my little scrap pile while I was working on this project, and then I'm going to add some bits of the solid purple, the solid green, and black and white, and then shape it into a Natasha style bead, making sure that it is wide enough and long enough that I'll be able to use my jellyfish shaped cutter on it. Now I'm going to take my jellyfish, and I just want to provide a little distinction between the tentacles. So I'm going to use a needle tool and press it on its side down through the clay just to make some lines. That way the tentacles are a little bit divided. Now I'm going to use some black pan pastel. You could use chalk, or you could do this part afterwards and use a black paint to fill it in. But I want to fill in the lines and the tentacles, again, just for distinction. So I'm going to use pan pastels, do that, remove any excess powder that gets on the top parts of the jellyfish with tape. And then I'm going to bake everything for 1 hour. Now that my piece is completely cool, I am going to leave it on the tile. Don't pop it off, but I did go ahead and remove the jellyfish because they are done, with the exception of the top coat of resin. This piece, I'm going to go ahead and do some antiquing on it. I'm using black acrylic paint, filling in the areas that I want to highlight and then wiping it off. The goal is to get the paint into the recesses, that way it highlights the texture that I added. I'm going to do that throughout the piece. There's several areas to do it with, and then I'm going to let this dry completely before I move on to the final step, which is putting resin on it. Now that my sea-based paint accents have dried, I'm going to put a top coat of resin on it. The product that I'm going to use is Deep Shine by tinypandora.com. This is a great product. I've seen some commentary where people have struggles with using it. It is not designed for flat surfaces. It's made to work with curves. So if you put it on a piece that's perfectly flat, it's going to pull away and you're going to have some issues with it. But if you try it on a curved piece, you'll see immediately that it is a superior product. In addition to giving this some shine and a wet look, which I want because it is the sea, it's going to add some strength to the product. Resin in itself is a very strong base, and when you apply it over something like this, it adds strength and protection and durability. So I'm going to use my Deep Shine and completely coat my entire sea-based piece with it. When I do the seagrass, I'm going to use a handheld UV light flashlight because that will allow me to set those areas immediately to kind of alleviate and work against its tendency to pull away on flat surfaces. The UV flashlight, I'll need to hold it in the same area. Usually 15 seconds or so gives it enough firmness that it's not going to pull away anymore. And then once I'm completely finished coating this with the Deep Shine, I'm going to cure it under my UV lamp for 15 minutes. I'm going to finish my jellyfish with Lisa Pavelka Magic Gloss, which you can also get at tinypandora.com. Then I'm going to cure them for 15 minutes. Once the pieces are cured, I'm going to use Gorilla Super Glue Gel to attach them to my canvas in the order that I'd like to. I press them down and hold them for 10 seconds or so before I let them go. Not been failed by this glue yet. I also sometimes press from the back of the canvas just to make sure that I'm getting the best connection possible. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'd love to see yours when you give it a try. Thanks so much, and bye for now.